Coming up next on This Week in Computer Hardware, AMD is not giving up. They're just not going to make needlessly powerful CPUs. Intel's going green. XFX, are they the kings of the mid-range GPU? Unreal 4 screenshots are delicious. More 3770K love. Thunderbolt for Windows. And the don't back up wrong guidelines. It's all coming up next on Twitch.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Twitch is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 171, recorded May 24th, 2012. Needlessly powerful CPUs. We like them.
This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by Netflix. Watch thousands of TV episodes and movies on your PC, Mac, or TV instantly. All streamed directly to you, saving you time, money, and hassle. For your free 30-day trial, go to netflix.com/twit.
Welcome to Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware. I'm Patrick Norton, and this is the show on TWiT where we break the biggest and most exciting news in PC and Mac hardware. We touch a little bit on the laptops, and of course, we occasionally talk about tablets. Why? Because they're taking over computing, or so we're told. Joining me as always, the man, the myth, the benchmarking legend, straight from his beautiful temporary home in Austin, Tejas, home of the Migas, which he will not try, Mr. Ryan Shrout.
That's a breakfast food, right? Like,
do you eat breakfast?
Well, not really. Like, I tend
most
to.
Important meal of the day.
The problem is now that I've reverted back to apartment living, as soon as I roll out of bed, the office chair is 4 feet away. So I tend to fall into that and start answering emails and stuff. And then by the time I'm done kind of catching up on what I missed on the overnight hours, it's lunchtime. And then I eat lunch. Now, if I can get brunch migas, this is a possibility. I'll hit up
Magnolia Cafe, man. Is that an acceptable option? Chad's like nodding his head.
I'm like nodding my head like crazy.
24 hours a day, the beautiful after a late session of benchmarking or for your lunch, I think you got to get the Migas at the Magnolia Cafe. There's like 300 of them in Austin. You can't swing a dead cat without hitting the Magnolia Cafe.
All right.
Just saying. I'm telling you.
Fair enough.
You'll thank me. Or maybe you'll call me and say, don't ever make me eat spicy food again. It's not that spicy, though, by Texas standards. On a completely random transition, we'll call it a segue if we're being generous, AMD has decided it will not chase Intel in making, and I quote, needlessly powerful, unquote, CPUs. Not our usual source of news, Bloomberg Business Week. AMD CEO Rory Reid claims his company will produce chips which are suited for consumer needs and not to crunch larger and larger bundles of information. They also like eating Intel's bacon. The question is it from a pig or a turkey? Scott with the slightly cruel editorial up on PCPer.com. And I got to say, I agree with Scott. You know, Reid, the CEO of AMD, which is having a little bit of trouble keeping up with Intel's performance numbers, says that there's enough processing power for everybody now. We don't need faster CPUs. Scott disagrees. I'm pretty sure Ryan disagrees. I'm pretty sure everybody in the audience disagrees because, you see, as the processors get faster, we get to do new and exciting things with this. Certainly Intel agrees because Intel's decided their processors are so fast they have to invent, push, promote, market, and pay for new interface technologies that will, of course, drive faster and faster CPUs. Or am I just digressing way too far from kind of the point of Mr. Reid, CEO of AMD?
No, I think the point is this is more of a reactive thing than anything else, right? So they've been behind on the CPU battles basically since, for at least 4 years or so, right? So the days when AMD was super competitive on the CPU side, on the x86 performance side are kind of long gone. They're not bad processors. If you have a Bulldozer part, if you have an AMD FX part, they're not bad processors. They're really not. But you know, they're unable to catch up with Intel's $350 processors, $300 processors. They can't keep up in that regard. And for a company that's in as big a financial dire straits as they are, to spend the time and money and resources to try to catch up to a company that, you know, profits more quarter than you make in a year in just net and just gross revenue is they're saying it's an uphill battle that they're not going to win. So they're going to continue to develop processor technology that they are, saying is good enough, essentially, while focusing on the advantage that they do have today, which is graphics processing, right? So the whole idea of the APU, the CPU and GPU combination on a single die, and the fact that their GPU performance tends to be significantly faster than what Intel's GPU performance is on their integrated processors, and they're further ahead in kind of like bonding these together with a shared memory space and all those types of things. So it's interesting in that I don't think this is new news, but when you see it kind of like in text in front of all the investors, we now have a very specific idea of how this is going to go, right? We know now that there's not some secret chip that AMD's been developing or holding on to, Bulldozer 2 or Pile Driver or anything like that, that's going to suddenly come in and be competitive with Sandy Bridge and Ivy Bridge. Otherwise, he would probably not make these statements up front.
So basically, this is probably less for the enthusiast market and more for Wall Street saying, look, this is where we're going. This is what we think we can do best. This is where we can make money. This is where we can be competitive. By the way, we also do some darn fine GPUs. Back away from the CPU thing. It's pointless. Let's just go on to things where we can make a better mark.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. They're trying to show Wall Street that we're not going to continue to be in this losing battle, that we're going to do new and innovative things that are going to get us a profit. Right. And going into CPU battle with Intel is not give them profit, especially not in the mid-range to high-end parts. So they're basically saying they're going to go a different route.
And we're going to walk away from the hill at Gettysburg and go do something much more functional. And I apologize if I've offended anyone in the audience with that statement. It's interesting. You mentioned profits at the tail end of there. Intel making money hand over fist, bucket by bucket. And that's one of the other big stories this week. Green is the new blue for Intel, pledges more eco-friendly. They released a report about their environmental efforts in terms of manufacturing efficiency, waste, the efficiency of their products. Their 2020 or 2020 mobile and data center product line is expected to use, quote, 25-fold less power than their 2010 product line. Intel is hoping to use less water and consume 1.4 terawatt hours, I think. Less. I've never seen a TWiT hour. Less energy between 2012 and 2015 in their manufacturing, with no chemical waste to landfill by 2020. That's a big, good set of goals, I think. Because, as Scott points out in this commentary, it's like Intel's got money. This is a wonderful thing to do with it, basically to mitigate and reduce their impact on the environment. So I am all for that. And it's kind of interesting because, it's kind of funny because, something I was listening to somebody talk about earlier today on Tech News Today is one of the issues, not on Tech News Today, on TWiT This Week in Science, is one of the issues with cleaning up any given company is that you also have to clean up your supply chain, as in the people who make the silicon and the people who provide the raw materials to the silicon and the people who provide the raw materials to the people who make the raw materials to make the silicon to make the, and you kind of laugh, but if anybody's, dumping stuff into a river somewhere along the way for a core component of your primary product, then you're not really that green. So I think it's really interesting to take a look at the idea that Intel's like, hey, we've got the money, let's do the right thing and try to keep more horrendous things out of the environment. So
yeah, I think it's interesting, and this is, they have a little bit of a benefit, right? Because they are a highly profitable company. They can kind of take these steps that maybe reduce their margin a little bit, but get them a little, notoriety on a positive side, which is always something, you should strive for.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because obviously Apple's making movements in this direction with Foxconn, and that's one of the things that comes out in the report is they're also looking to, remove human rights violations from their supply chain. Quote, by the end of 2012, Intel intends to validate that all tantalum, which is something I don't get to say very often, along with terawatt hours, all the tantalum would be conflict-free with the other three minerals verified by the end of 2013. That's pretty cool. The idea that there's not going to be any slave labor involved in the production of the chips that I consume makes me happy. The idea that people are going to make a living wage, that people are going to be fairly treated, I think that is important to support.
I would agree.
So yay Intel, yay Apple, and we will see what comes next. GPUs, maybe? Exciting new, the kings of the mid-range, you say, sir?
Well, they're not new GPUs, but they're new to us. So these are, Josh did a review of a pair of XFX video cards, the Radeon HD 7850 and 7870 Black Edition graphics cards. So these are kind of the higher end overclocked models.
Ooh.
And the 7800 cards are the mid-range type offerings from AMD in these years. Right, so we've got the 7900 series above it. Both of these cards, Josh came away that he really liked. We really like the design of them. I've looked at the 7950 or 7970 of this same kind of cooler design and stuff, and it's really nice cooler. They work really well. We've talked about the 7850 and the 7870 on This Week in Computer Hardware many times, but with the kind of realignment of the GPU market with the release of the 680 kind of, because you can't really buy it in the 670, which you can buy. You know, what was interesting is that the 7870 now has to go up against the GTX 670, and it loses that battle. And it's only about $10 less expensive than the GTX 670. So it's not as attractive a part as the HD 7850 from XFX. Again, this is an overclocked part. I believe it sells for like $274, and it competes against parts like the GTX 570 and the Radeon 6970 from the last generation of video cards. And in Josh's testing, this new overclocked 7850 was quite a bit faster than those other cards, yet is able to undercut them in price. So if you're kind of, you know, if you're on the lookout for that sub $300 video card still, this XFX 7850 is actually a really, really good option because it gives you all the features, right? I think you get 2 gigs of frame buffer. You're getting support for 3 displays right out of the box. It's overclocked, pretty good power efficiency. NVIDIA doesn't have any Kepler-based option at that price point at all. Their lowest priced part is $399 still. So for $120 less than those parts, you can get a really high performance, competitive, and efficient part from AMD and XFX. So I don't want to go, we don't need to get any more detail than that specifically, but if you go to PCPro.com, you can check out Josh's full review of that. You can look at all the benchmarks and that kind of stuff and see, you know, how it maybe compares to what cards you have currently and that kind of stuff. But overall, a very good card for the money. And that's what I think most people are actually looking for.
I would agree with that. Still probably looking to keep it under 300, but I have diapers to buy. Weird story. Maybe you can clarify this one for me. NVIDIA is, quote, likely not recalling all 600 series Kepler GPUs. Editor's note, we are getting a lot of flack for posting this story today, telling us that we are, quote, giving the site credibility, unquote, referring to the Nosker site that first started the recall rumor simply by posting about it on PC Per, even though our post by Tim states to take the leak with a grain of salt and that these GPUs go through rigorous testing and certification. Some people think we were in the wrong to post about this at all. So let me be perfectly clear. The recall referenced in the story below is almost assuredly complete and utter fluff, since I don't think I can say bull.
Fluff is a good word.
Fluff on the air. So should we just skip past this? There is a rumor that NVIDIA, there was a rumor, probably bull fluff, that NVIDIA would be recalling the 600 series Kepler GPUs. You do not put any credence in this.
No,
Okay.
no, not at all. They're not going to be recalled. I mean, they wouldn't have anything to replace them with, first of all, obviously. Yeah, no, nothing here. I just wanted to make sure the same reason why we posted it on the website and talked about it on the podcast last night is like there are other people that may have seen this rumor, and we wanted to make sure that they knew that that was not the case. If you were like, oh, no, I'm not going to buy a GTX 670, that's not the decision you should be making. So you'll be fine with the cards, and all these manufacturers have warranties should anything else remotely go wrong with anybody's video cards. So
Cool.
You'll be good.
Asus N56 VM notebooks. Essentially, it's I was kind of confused whether it was an Ivy Bridge proof of concept or whether the M56 VM was going to be something that Asus was shipping.
So
it's pretty.
It is, and it is still kind of up in the air. I think this is going to be sold eventually, but maybe under a slightly different name. I'm looking here. Looks like there's an unboxing of it, so it may actually be for sale then. It just may not be out yet. This was the reference system that Intel sent out with the first Ivy Bridge quad-core mobile part. So we've already tested the CPU. Like our first article on this looked at the performance, right? Strictly CPU and integrated graphics performance, kind of the processor in a mobile form factor. This review really looks at the machine as a whole, right? So it's a Core i7 3720 KM or QM. It's a high-end quad-core part, HD 4000 graphics. It actually has NVIDIA Kepler GT630M discrete graphics included on as well with Optimus technology, so you don't have to worry about running out your battery life just because you have a discrete GPU. 8 gigs of memory, Blu-ray drive, 1080p monitor. I mean, it's a really nice system that has decent battery life for a 15.6-inch model. And I would like to see this available for sale. I don't know what the pricing would be. The issue is, I think, the 3720 QM is a fairly expensive CPU,
right?
And maybe like the rest of the features wrapped around. I don't know. If you get discrete graphics, a GT630M, and you've got Blu-ray, and you've got 1080p screen, and you've got good battery life, 4 USB 3.0 ports, that's a pretty healthy machine. If you could get that for $1,300 or something like that, I have no idea what they would sell it for. I mean, that's actually a pretty reasonable machine. It's not an ultrabook. It's not super thin and light or anything like that. But in terms of just a high performance kind of average notebook design, right? It would be up there. So
this is a good thing.
Yeah, check out that review as well at pcper.com. And there's a lot of good stuff to like about it. As I have found, if you use your laptop as an everyday machine, the ability to have a ton of connectivity on it makes a big deal. I mean, this Alienware M17X that I'm using as my machine today has 5 USB ports, and I'm using all of them currently. So
you can plug everything on your desktop into a USB hub and then plug that into your notebook.
Yeah, but see, that's like extra accessories and adapters, and I got to plug that in somewhere as well. Okay. It's just nice to have everything you need readily available.
One of the things I've really enjoyed about I've recently done some NDA briefings from some PC manufacturers who will remain nameless lest I be sued out of existence. But one of the things I've really enjoyed is seeing Ethernet jacks on Ultrabooks, and 3 to 5 USB 3.0 ports, and the idea that, hey, we are not going to ignore connectivity. We are not going to force you to or tell you to buy a bunch of $30 dongles so you can go buy them for $20 on Monoprice. So right. I'm a big fan of having like Ethernet. Apple, if you think about it, Ethernet, MacBook Air. It would be so useful because that dongle is such a pain.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's like just having that kind of there is nice.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Antec High Current Pro Platinum 1000 watt power supply reviewed basically up on PCPer.com. I love Antec because they are attempting to quote their objective is embodying everything a premium power supply can accomplish today. Phase wave design, which eliminates most of the internal wiring by placing 2 DC to DC converter boards right on top of the modular cable DC connector board. But the idea is that they're also going to use an LLC resonant design to boost efficiency to platinum levels. Excellent voltage regulations, advanced low voltage fan controller, relatively quiet dual ball bearing fan, an excellent assortment of all modular cables, universal AC input with active PFC, ERP, Lot 6 2013 compliance, and a 7-year warranty. Yeah. That's is it worth $270? Because it seems like a ball of excellence if you need the gigantic power supply.
Yeah. So I guess the interesting part about these types of power supplies, it's a top of the line power supply, right? $280, 1,000 watts, 7-year warranty is kind of like, I don't know if I've ever seen another power supply that has a 7-year warranty. The issue that I have with these is it's a platinum rated, it's an 80 plus platinum rated unit, which means that it has the highest possible efficiency, the highest rating available of efficiency for a power supply, which is great, right? You're saving money, you're using less electric, you're powering your system in the most efficient way possible. The issue is as you move up from silver to gold to platinum, you're paying quite a bit more for those steps up in efficiency,
and very modest steps in efficiency, I think.
Yeah, well, they're modest, especially in the fact that we talk about how much money you can make or not make, right? So you're not going to save money. Like, you'll save some amount of money using a platinum versus a gold power supply, but not enough to pay for the difference. So you really just have to have, the desire to have the most efficient unit, right? Kind of like when the first hybrid cars were coming out and they were just exorbitantly more expensive than a similarly spec'd out car that was not a hybrid, right? And that's still the case to some degree, right? You just have to want the benefits of what you get. And the same thing with this. It's definitely not a hybrid power supply. But it's interesting. And if you want one of the top end power supplies you can get, this is it. I mean, it's a high quality piece of electronics, right? I mean, it got our gold award. The only negative that Lee found with it in our review is that it's a little bit longer, deeper into the case, and the reason it is that way is because it has to have higher quality components in order to hit that platinum certification. So it's a little bit bigger than your normal power supply, even bigger than your normal 1,000-watt power supply. But still a good unit.
Yeah, and the other thing is if you're packing enough stuff in a case that you actually need a 1,000-watt power supply, it's probably a pretty big case.
Yeah.
Unreal 4 first screenshots. What do you think?
I think they look really awesome, and I think that I can't remember exactly the specific comments that they made, but they were basically saying that modern console hardware doesn't even come close to being able to run Unreal Engine 4 the way we want it to run. And that gives me, like good feelings and goosebumps, because it's like, okay, this is what happens. Like the whole thing we talked about with the needlessly powerful CPU on AMD, the fact that no GPU company has said that yet is why you get engines developed like this. Right. Unreal, Epic wouldn't develop an engine like this if NVIDIA and AMD 2 years ago had said, what, we're pretty much all the GPU power we really need, we think, for the foreseeable future. So we're just we want to develop those needlessly powerful GPUs. That hinders what creativity software developers can have. And so seeing this means that not only are the GTX 680s and 690s and the HD 7970s of today going to be utilized, but that there are chips coming out in the future. They're going to be better. They're going to be faster. Epic knows this. They know what the roadmaps of these guys are. They have confidence that they'll be able to take advantage of these things in the future. Plus, they're just badass looking.
Yeah, I look at that and all I can think of is the battle from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
With a certain smog. I can't think of I'm sorry, my geek cred is falling rapidly because I can't remember every individual villain in the Lord of the Rings, but
it's all right. I won't hold it against you.
I want to see it. I want to see it moving. I want to see it moving in real time.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Because that could be seriously epic. Not so seriously epic. It's been funny watching people. I was tweeting about this earlier, and people were just saying foul things. Windows 8, the browser, Internet Explorer, the Metro browser, will have Flash integration in place. The idea being that if you go to a website with Flash, instead of seeing a big sort of like, you don't have Flash, you suck, go somewhere else to enjoy premium content or not so premium content. But Rafael Riviera has a Within Windows blog. He co-authors with Paul Theroux about, and basically the article is talking about Flash integration in the Metro web browser. Obviously, Microsoft being all HTML5 on a stick, and now suddenly they're going to put Flash in the browser directly. Quote, Adobe actively supports Microsoft's efforts and has provided the source code to facilitate the integration into Metro Internet Explorer 10. And security will rest somewhat on Microsoft's ability to patch their software in time, but will also be supported by a whitelist system. Flash for Internet Explorer 10 will only be supported on certain websites in certain ways. Unless your website is listed as requiring Flash for compatibility reasons, then your website will not have access to the platform. Yeah. Quote, it follows the rumors of what happened to Vista, a bunch of years working on a secure memory management architecture that was scrapped at the last minute, requiring over half of the OS to be written in C#, C++, actually. We all know how great that turned out. I don't think it's quite that bad. I just think for a lot of, it's been interesting watching, like, I'm hardcore Windows user. I hate Windows 8. What? They're putting Flash in. I hate Windows 8 more. You know what I mean? It's been interesting to watch the reaction to this. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens when it ships, and of course, whitelisting means it's probably going to be useless for the 80% of websites people are browsing with a whole lot of Flash content on them, unless they're under the age of 13, judging from the Disney pictures that are used to illustrate what's going on there. Yeah, it's funny. I guess Silverlight is not popular enough. Silverlight's powering Netflix. I think Silverlight's doing okay. Just saying.
Yeah.
One last story before we take a moment to thank one of our sponsors, Thunderbolt for Windows. Yeah. Okay, I'm the only person who cares because I spent a lot of time on Mac machines and I'm looking for anything to do with Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt for Windows Performance Preview, Asus P8 Z77V Premium, and I believe MSI has also announced a Thunderbolt-enabled motherboard. I also really like saying Thunderbolt. It's just a Firewire, Thunderbolt, screaming hell interface.
USB 3 is not nearly as exciting to say. You're right.
No, USB 3.0 versus Thunderbolt. Sorry, I'll stop
here, that Asus P8 Z77V Premium motherboard. This is really hard to do with the camera. So here, let's see if I can get it to show you the. There we go. That little thing there is your Thunderbolt port. All right, and this is one of the few motherboards that will ship that will have the Intel controller actually on the motherboard. Now, I haven't actually started testing it yet. We just got this motherboard in yesterday. One of the other cool things about this motherboard, just because I have it here and I want to show you, is it does come with a 32 gig mSATA SSD on the motherboard. So it's not going to be a cheap motherboard, would be my guess, based on this. But Thunderbolt connectivity coming to Windows. Initial reports, our performance is really good. And if, hit or miss on the compatibility, that's going to be the main issue, right? So it's like when USB first came out. If you plug in your device, is it going to work? It's going to depend on BIOS. It's going to depend on drivers. It's going to depend on a lot of implementation issues. So I'm not looking forward to the headaches of figuring it all out, but I am looking forward to getting it and playing with it. Ordering a Thunderbolt-based display. We have a Pegasus R4 4-drive array Thunderbolt external unit that we're using for testing and that kind of stuff. So I'm really, really looking forward to playing around with this kind of stuff and seeing how it works out. Because I don't deal with Macs all day, but I deal with video stuff all of the time. And the promise of Thunderbolt is, daisy-chained storage devices and displays that have the capability to run at their full speed. So, I'm eager to see how close we can get to like a gigabyte a second on these motherboards and this performance level. So it should be interesting. But more on that soon.
Now all we just need is Thunderbolt accessories.
Yeah,
there's just a dearth of them. If you have by the way, a favorite Thunderbolt accessory, we'd love to hear about it. Twitch, TWICH at twit.tv, or email us any PC hardware question or tablet question or question about how to get your PC hardware or tablet or anything else running, because we like those questions. Matter of fact, we're going to take a moment to thank one of our sponsors, our friends over at Netflix. Then we're going to continue with a big old pile of your viewer questions.
That's right. This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by Netflix. These guys are a favorite of ours. Obviously, if this is the first time you ever listened to our show, welcome. And now go to netflix.com/twit, because you're going to want to sign up for the service. Netflix is the service that allows you to stream thousands of TV shows and movies directly to you instantly, saving you time, money, and hassle. You don't have to go to a store. You don't have to go to a colored box at any kind of convenience location. You can watch as many movies and as TV shows as you want, anytime you want, and you can cancel at any time if you do not like the service in the middle of the free trial. So besides, you have the capability to like instantly access these movies and TV shows wherever you're at. You can watch it on your TV. If you have an Xbox 360, a PS3, or a Wii, if you have a DVD player or Blu-ray player, or even some TVs have the Netflix streaming capability built into them already. So, you check around. Your devices may already have support for Netflix, so you can just sign up for a free account and get moving today. If you can watch on the go on your iPhone, on your iPad, lots of Android devices now support it. Of course, you can watch on your Mac or your PC. It's great if you take your laptop with you and you're traveling out of town for work. As long as you have internet connection, you'll be able to watch your movies and TV shows on Netflix. And one of the benefits is you can watch them as many times as you want in a row. If you've got kids and they like to watch the same cartoons over and over again, you can do that as unlimited number of times. If you start watching a movie in one place or a TV show in one place and have to stop in that location, maybe you're watching it at night, you get tired, you go to bed the next morning, or you go into bed and you can finish watching it on your phone, right? It has this really cool kind of new age DVR, I guess is what I'll call it. We'll call it cloud computing DVR devices. I don't really know what they call it. But it's a really, really great service. It's super convenient. It's really great quality, and the selection is tremendous as well. And we're going to give you the option to try Netflix completely free for 30 days. All you have to do is go to netflix.com/twit, TWiT, and sign up today. Make sure you use that URL. It helps us out, helps you out. Everybody's happy. But netflix.com/twit is where you can go to get your free 30-day trial. We thank Netflix for their support of This Week in Computer Hardware and the entire TWiT network, really. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I love Netflix. If you haven't tried it out, please listen to the man. Try it quickly. We got an email from James. He's looking for, basically an Intel CPU selection. He needs some help picking one out. So he's a big fan of the show. Thank you, James. I have a quick question on processors. I'm looking at building a system around either an i7-3930K or an i7-3770K. I already have two Samsung A30 128GB drives I plan to put in RAID 0. He's only interested in the performance, doesn't care about reliability. An EVGA GTX 670 SC on the way, 32 gigs Corsair XMMS DDR3, 1600 RAM, and a Kigwin Laser 1000 PSU. This machine will mainly serve as my lab machine, where I'll run various virtual machines, but I also plan on doing a decent amount of gaming on it as well. I plan on adding another graphics card in the future, probably another EVGA GTX 670 SC. I'm hoping I will not have to build a new PC for at least a couple of years. What processor or chipset do you think offers the most value?
This question sounds familiar. This may have been our last question from last week.
Uh-oh.
I don't remember, but I will answer again. The reason I think it's the same question because it was the last word, right? Value. And I said, if you're going to go for value, the 3930K and associated X79 motherboard are going to cost you a little bit more money than the 3770. So I would still go with the Ivy Bridge part and save a little money that way, and you're not going to lose much performance in that regard. So it's a killer system otherwise, man. Right. I mean, the 670, 32 gigs of memory, 1,000-watt power supply.
It'll be a killer system with either CPU.
That's actually a good point. It is going to be a badass system either way you go. You make it – I would still – if I were building this system today, I would use a 3770K.
Yeah, so I tend to agree with you on that.
So we got an interesting email maybe it was a week ago, 2 weeks ago from Chris about a Crossfire cable. And I still don't know if I have an answer for him, but I wanted to ask the question, hoping that our audience may be able to help us out. He says, enjoy watching the show every week. Keep up the great work. Recently, I picked up two of the Sapphire HD 7970 overclocked 3GB graphics cards at what I think was a great price at $449 each on Newegg. I was hoping to Crossfire them to replace a set of Crossfire 6950s that I've been running for a while. The problem I'm running into is with the fan configuration. The fans are on the side and the assembly is a bit larger than the normal 2-slot setup. While it works really well with just a single card setup, they aren't set up well to be run in Crossfire configuration. I'm guessing he doesn't want them to be directly abutting if they're kind of close in their proximity there. When I put the cards in the first 2x16 slots, the first card loses all of its airflow and overheats really quickly under load. hit 85C and was climbing within about 20 seconds.
Ouch.
I tried putting the cards in the first and third slots, but the supplied 100mm crossfire bridge won't reach between the cards. I've dug around Google and elsewhere, but can't seem to find anyone that makes a crossfire bridge longer than 100mm. Do you have any other suggestions? Like maybe returning the whole lot and going with NVIDIA. First thing I'll say is 85C is not super high for a GPU. It's high, but it's not super high. So if you said it was still climbing, so if it was still going up, then that would be an issue. But if you stay below 90C on your video card, you're okay. That's not great, but it's okay. And he didn't give me the temperatures like of a single card by itself. If the single card was like 65 and you're seeing 85, that's a really big difference. But if a single card is like 80 or 75, then your difference there is not that dramatic.
Right.
I Googled and went through Amazon, and I could not find a longer crossfire cable for sale anywhere. Somebody in the chat room is saying that you can get a longer bridge cable from MSI. That's from Tinker Toy Tech. I don't know if they actually sell it, though. But I don't know where you find this. Like if you go to Newegg, if you go to Amazon, you can buy SLI bridges and you could buy crossfire cables. And every single crossfire cable I found was 100mm exactly.
And none of them are flexible, are they?
No, they're all flexible. They are all the flexible kind. But if it's not long enough, it doesn't really. I guess it's not going to help anything. Because what's interesting is crossfire connectors come with video cards. SLI connectors come with motherboards. That's like the difference between the two. So a motherboard vendor, if their SLI configurations, if their multi-GPU configurations say, well, we can tell that these cards are going to be spaced together differently, they will include a different SLI bridge. But for Crossfire, since that all is just GPU, they all come with graphics cards. You don't really see them in the motherboards. That's probably where the difference is, right? So the video card vendors don't really count on having to figure stuff out for that. So if anybody in the audience has an idea on where they can get those Crossfire cables, if nothing else, I tell you what, Chris, if you send me an email, I will drive to AMD next week. They're 10 minutes away, and I will have them send you a cable if we don't get an answer next week from the audience.
Because assuming, of course, they have one.
They better. I mean, the guy spends $900 on AMD video cards. He should be able to get a cable so he could utilize them both together. Just saying.
I think that's reasonable. Let's just hope it doesn't have to be custom. Some engineer at AMD is going, oh man, they're going to be in my cube next week. I'm going to have to wire this up.
Yeah, get your soldering out, buddy.
Get the super fine tip ready. Oh, soldering ribbon cables makes me want to weep. Drew's got an email with an upgrade I can feel for. Yes, he does. He says, great work on the podcast. I listen to it each and every week on my daily NYC commute. Thank you, Drew. And I've done that commute, so I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm glad to see that others appreciate the inner workings of hardware just as much as I do. I usually build a new computer around the release of a new operating system, Windows operating system. With Windows 8 heading towards us later in the year, I'm starting to put together the details of what I am putting into a fresh new build. I currently have an i7-920. Oh, that doesn't feel familiar. With 12 gigabytes of RAM, also feeling familiar. And with the new purchase, it will obviously be Ivy Bridge related. The question is, do I go with an Ivy Bridge i5 or do I continue with the i7? Granted, there's probably not much that I do that requires the HT of an i7, so I probably answered my own question. However, what do you guys think? I don't overclock, so the system will be stocked. I don't think anything I do really requires the Core i7. Do I save the $100 or do I spend it? $219.99 versus $319.99. Thanks, guys, and continue the excellent work. We will do our best, Drew. On one hand, I would say, like, if you're not doing video editing, if you're not doing extremely uncontrolled gaming on a monitor that's larger than 1080p, man, spend the $100 on a SSD if you weren't planning on buying one, or an MSSD for the motherboard if you have huge power supply. If you want a huge, if you want a huge hard drive for your C drive. But what do you think? Core i5, Core i7?
I would say
Core
the SSD. We don't. That's the problem is we don't know if he was going to buy one anyway. If he was going to buy one anyway, then I would say maybe get the i7 anyway. As is usually the case on the show, I am the person who was going with, let's just get a little bit more performance anyway, right? I tend to not be as cost conscious as most of our readers would probably like me to be in my discussions. So I would say SSD or i7. I don't know if that's a good mixing point, but
I think it's pretty reasonable. Actually, funny. I just found. I'm not familiar with this website, alienbabeltech.com. Okay. And they did let me post the link in the show notes so Chad can get to it. Sorry. Sorry, everybody at home, but thank you for playing along. Chad's got it. No need to embed it. And if you look at this, it's actually a comparison between the Core i7-920 versus the 3770K. And it might be worth checking out if you're thinking about it, because you can sort of look at the delta, the performance delta, which is apparent and evident once you finally scroll down to the I know the benchmarks results were there somewhere. Oh, there's a test configuration. This is, instead of doing like 6 jump pages, it's like one giant page.
See, now people know why we break things up into pages in our stories. Organization.
Hold on a second. I want to make sure teenagers aren't killing each other outside of the TWiT studio. Okay, sorry. I don't know if you could hear the scream in the background, but it seems to be all right. Yeah, it's interesting. Like Cinebench results, 3770K CPU, 8.61 seconds, and the Core i7 960 is running at 5.48 seconds. Excuse me, points, not seconds. So that's like a 30% difference. Core i7 920 CPU, 7.20 points on Cinebench versus where did it go? It's not on there.
They changed it just while you weren't looking.
Well, there's gaming related. There's 3D Mark Vantage benchmarks on there too. It's something to look at when you start realizing the kind of delta in performance between the 920 and the 3770K. You might be less concerned about that last little bit of performance versus the Core i5, but it is something to take a look at. Wow, that is one giant chunk of benchmarks there. Sorry, it's like Alien versus Predator, 4X anti-aliasing, Call of Pripyat, 2X anti-aliasing, F1, Metro 2033, Lost Planet 2, Hawks 2, Civ 5, Dirt 3, Deus Ex, Batman AC. Obviously a gaming focus on this particular review, but it's interesting, like Alien versus Predator, 31.4 versus 31.7 frames. 4X anti-aliasing, obviously this is kind of graphics card restricted because we're looking at the performance, and it is almost identical for gaming. Interesting.
Yeah.
That Core i5 is looking really good. Get the SSD,
yeah, especially if that's the thing. What are we at on time? We got one more at least, or let's do one more question, I guess.
Sounds good.
Email from Kyle about backing up multiple drives. Says, I'm looking to get an SSD to put my OS and a few programs on with a hard drive for data. What is the best way to back this up? I'm a big proponent of backing up after losing a lot of very important photos about 5 years ago. I'm interested in either backing up within my machine with internal or external drives, or a solution such as FreeNAS or Unraid, which I will probably build anyway because I'm going to attempt a media server.
Cool.
Kay, thanks. Love the show. I'm a big fan of both your guys' work. Thank you very much, Kyle. So this is kind of an interesting dilemma, right? When you have multiple drives, it suddenly becomes more complex to back everything up, right? You now have an OS drive and you have a data drive. Is it as simple as just making 2 copies of everything, or...
Yes, no, maybe. I think you'd never do your backup on a drive that's internal to your system, step one, right? In case, well, it's almost kind of funny. It's like backup, yes. I like to back up to an external drive. I like to image my system to an external drive. Basically image to incremental backups to an external drive. And when I'm done making that image or making that backup, I like to unplug it from my PC. And ideally store it somewhere else in the house for a number of reasons. One, in case there's a lightning strike, I don't want it plugged into the wall. Two, by the way, your PC should be, plugged into a power strip that has a good surge protector, or better yet, an uninterruptible power supply. But three, the reason you move it somewhere else in the house is so if somebody breaks into your house and steals your PC, they don't grab everything on the desk, including the backup of your backup. But, one backup is not a backup. One backup is a good spot. It's a good point for failure. So I'd say, image it to an external drive. Keep that external drive unplugged from the computer and unplugged from the wall, preferably store it somewhere else. And then back your critical files off-site. Like maybe your media files aren't as important, but your critical work files or, your tax data, the photos of the kids that are, or mom or grandma or anybody else that are irreplaceable. FreeNAS and Unraid are really cool. I would say like back it up to a local drive, back it up to FreeNAS or Unraid, and then the critical stuff that you can't replace, also back that up online to Carbonite or to CrashPlan or one of the other online services that are there. If you build a FreeNAS or an Unraid, do yourself a favor, buy a quality uninterruptible power supply and plug that server into the UPS, because you've got a whole lot of hard drives inside of there, and if they go sideways because of power fluctuations, you're going to be really irritated.
To say the least.
I like both are really cool. Unraid's basically there's a free version of Unraid, but the commercial version is a little easier to install. FreeNAS is really cool too. I haven't checked FreeNAS recently to figure out if they've implemented some more of the media streaming features from FreeNAS 7. FreeNAS 8 is the current version. FreeNAS.org and FreeNAS 8 features.
Unraid was always the one that I was really interested in trying. We never actually got around to doing it, but that would be the one I would be really interested in trying. It just seemed interesting from a build-it-yourself kind of perspective as well.
Yeah, no, they're both. I mean, either one is definitely worth experimenting with. Here's the FreeNAS 8 feature chart. Okay, 8.2. If they've released 8.2, so the services, BitTorrent, UPnP, iTunes DAP, web server, all coming up in 8.2, and the FreeNAS versions, they're still at 8.0.4. So it's going to be a while before the cool media streaming stuff is available for FreeNAS 8.
Okay.
Which makes me think Unraid might be the one to go with for your first experiment.
I think everything you've said is correct, right? It's just kind of a pain.
Let's hope so.
well, yeah, we always hope that every week, right? It's one of those things. I was having a conversation with somebody earlier this week that there are some fundamental computer problems that have not been solved, and it seems very odd that those have not been solved. And backup is one of those.
Right.
It seems very odd to me that 2 decades into my computing career, I'm still worried about, is all of my data safe? And that should be like number one problem to be solved by some computing companies out there, right? Like Carbonite
it has been solved.
Almost there.
It's been solved if you don't need all of your data now. No, I mean I'm being a smartass, but it's. Yeah. I'm sorry. I was being a smartass, but it's kind of funny. If you have a giant pile of money, the problem is solved. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a giant pile of money, if you're not a large corporation, if you're not Google, if you're not, a Fortune 1000 corporation that can afford a huge, gigantic pipe connected to your bunker of data, somewhere buried in Kansas, then it, as soon as you get out of the enterprise class backup area, it starts getting really fickle. So,
and that's I've been doing some writing on cloud computing and that kind of stuff, and that's one of those areas that I really think. I'm hoping that it just totally takes this out of the equation, because I don't want to have to fix somebody's hard drive again or try to recover somebody's data off a hard drive ever again for the rest of my life. And it surprises me that there aren't just tons of super easy options, right? Carbonite is close. The other competitors are close, but like there's just little things like, oh, you wanted to back up your video? Sorry, you can't do that automatically. And those types of things just kind of hold me back from really believing that is the best we can do.
Well, or worse yet, you can back them up just as long as you don't mind spending the next 4.5 months using your entire data cap. And then people will be like, wait, Comcast announced this week that they're dumping the data cap. Well, actually, Comcast announced that they're temporarily going to not notice the data cap, except in cases of extreme abuse while they do experiments.
Get your backups in.
It's so funny, right? But it's like, they're going to do either a flat 300 with an additional 50, basically 10 gigabytes for every 50 gigabytes you download over 300 gigabytes, or they're going to do tiered based on the plan you have. The more you spend, the more data you'll get. Again, with additional blocks of 50 gigabytes costing $10. But I mean, that's one of the problems. It's the one problem for me with online backup is like my upload speed sucks. I have huge amounts of data I would like backed up offsite. So basically, like Robert Heron and I, we were talking about, like, he lives in an apartment building. If something wipes out his apartment building, my house will probably still be standing. If something wipes out my house, his apartment building will probably still be standing. But then you end up with like 12 terabytes of hard drives. You're wandering between two different locations.
It's a complex problem. You need. Yeah. Everybody needs to come up with their own solution today, right? Don't be that person that's going to wait for the computing world to figure it out. Right. You need to figure it out for yourself. Otherwise, you're gonna screw up and stuff's going to be gone and you're going to be upset. And you won't be able to be mad at Patrick and I because we told you to back up.
And props to Kyle, by the way, for working on this already, because he's already suffered the pain of irreplaceable photos being lost forever. It sucks. Like every time we talk about this on TechZilla, probably every time you guys write about it on PC Per, you get some email where somebody's like, I backed up because you told me to, and then my computer inhaled its own tail and died today. So I still have my doctoral thesis because I listened to you, or vice versa. They're like, I heard you and I didn't back up and I lost my pictures of my grandmother and my baby. And it's back it up, people. At the very least, get a thumb drive. Move your critical files over to the thumb drive. Put the thumb drive safe. It starts simple. Multiple backups, multiple places. Start simple. Start cheap. But just stuff you can't live without. Make sure it's somewhere else than on your computer, because computers are fickle, temporary things at their worst.
You are correct.
Oh my goodness. What's coming up on PC Per this week?
So I've already mentioned we're going to do our Thunderbolt testing hopefully before next week, and hopefully I'll have my Thunderbolt monitor in as well. We can test a bunch of stuff with that. Also, ironically, based on some of the comments in the chat room, I do have a retail GTX 680 that arrived today, and the purpose is to address claims from AMD and AMD fanboys that say that the performance you get can vary dramatically from one 680 to the next, right? Now, I only have one retail sample, and to do the testing right, I need like 4 dozen, in which case I would be able to sleep on a bed of GTX 680s. But we only have one, so we're going to start small and kind of progress from there and make sure that everything is up to the standards that NVIDIA said it should be. That would be a good thing. Yeah. Oh man, we're gonna have some fun. We talked about Handbrake. It's kind of funny. It's the questions about Handbrake, like how can I make Handbrake run faster? And the answer, of course, is buy a faster CPU. We've got what people are saying is the HDTV to beat in 2012. We got a Panasonic Viera review coming up, the VT50. We're going to talk about backing up your Blu-rays and DVDs, your hard drive. I should say this is all on TechZilla, techzilla.com. And just for my own personal edification, because Robert Heron and I have been buying a lot of LED bulbs, we're going to talk about what the numbers on the CFL and LED light bulbs really mean, how you pick one, why you might not want to buy cheap ones, and why CFL bulbs and certain fixtures die early. All this and more coming up on the next episode. That's interesting, because I bought some of those LED light bulbs. Mm-hmm. The one that is lighting my face right now is bouncing off a wall, but it is an LED light bulb. So I'll be very curious to see what you guys find there, because I basically sat in front of the light bulb department at Lowe's. I was like, I have no idea what's going on. This one looks good. Let's just buy some of those, and they're expensive too. They're not cheap devices. So interesting to see. But in theory, they should last a lot longer than incandescents and save you a considerable amount of money on your electrical bill. Yeah. Kelvin and lumens and longevity. Oh my. That's it for this edition of Twitch This Week in Computer Hardware. I'm Patrick Norton. I'm Ryan Shrout. We'll see you next week on Twitch.